Hello. You might not be able to recognize me. My name is. Maybe you do. Maybe you're one of the cool kids that pay attention. But my name is Percy LaFleur. I am a cool guy, probably the coolest guy you will ever meet. Duck Daddy and Boom Boom Stick aficionado. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dad. And today we're going to be talking about like the contents of Eve the Awakening by Jenna Moreci. And after I go through sort of what happened, because I was there for a majority of the time, let's be honest, we'll talk about like the aspects of the story. But before we get started, a couple of things. If you enjoy what happens on this channel, make sure to like it, make sure to subscribe, make sure to make comments of the kind of things that you like to see, because then you'll get more of those things, you know? Number two, if you would like your stuff featured on this channel, check out the links in the description below for them why, and for this thing called Fresh Meat Feature. And then number three, I hear there's a new book coming out, something called Boom, about like a YouTube channel and fireworks and the Ukrainian. Probably check that out. Seems pretty cool, especially if it's taken down the pigs, which I have an idea that it is against the pigs. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into exactly what it is that happened in Eve the Awakening. So it starts out with like Eve. She's like 8 years old, right? And she's just in the front yard playing by herself, waiting for her parents to come home. And like she sees them right down the street and she's waving at them and she's smiling and she's anticipating what it's going to be like when they finally pull into the driveway and they say, "Hey, Eve." But before they can pull into the driveway, wham! They are hit by a semi-truck out of nowhere that hits them so hard. They flip not once, not twice, but 3 times, and it's so bad that the car wraps around a light pole. Well, the trucker obviously kind of possibly criminal, but definitely somewhat distraught, climbs out of the car and sees little Eve sitting there on the driveway, who witnessed all of it, and with blood running and gushing down his face, and probably a nice chunk missing out of his head, he's like, "Don't you dare tell anybody what you just saw, you little brat. Don't you dare." And because Eve, you know, she's an emotional girl, she's a caring girl, she's also a girl that's not really the greatest at, like, reining back her emotions, let's be honest. This is her moment of awakening of her chimera powers, which is something that we'll learn is some kind of weird genetically different human. They're bigger, stronger, faster, and they have the ability to lift things up with their minds if they really think about it. So what she does here is she picks up this little 8-year-old girl. She picks up this truck, this semi-truck that is like tens of thousands of pounds or something like that, and she lifts it into the air and she smashes it quite brutally right down on this trucker, right? She just, I like to imagine it so hard that his head just flies, pops off his neck and just flies down the street like a football kick. So that happens, and you know, if her dad kind of talked to her about the rules of criminality, she might not have done this in broad daylight, but because she did do it in broad daylight, you kind of have to talk to the pigs, right? So eventually she gets taken to a interrogation room, right? And she's just a little 8-year-old girl. She's got no friends, no family, whatever talking to her. It's just the cops being like, "You're gonna rot in hell, little girl, but first we're gonna make you rot in prison because it's worse than hell, first off, and you also deserve it because you're a little stupid bitch-ass girl that killed somebody." But because she's they're playing up this whole thing, and because she's a little girl, they can't really keep her, and it was an accident, but they hate her for being a chimera, so they're gonna kind of shit talk her as much as they can, right? Before they hand her over to her aunt, who also hates her for being a chimera. But you know what? Does that mean that her sister had married a chimera, or is this something that like awakens in random kids every now and then? I don't really know how it works, but genetically, not genetically, whatever it is, none of them like Eve because she's a chimera, and they still take care of her anyway. Well, this means that Eve, as soon as she's old enough, she moves the hell out of that house, because who wants to live with somebody that hates them, right? It is not a good situation to be in. Of all people, I understand it, even though, you know, I love my parents and my parents love me, let's be honest about that. So she moved out on her own, and so time skip forward a little bit. She's 17, 18, graduating high school as second best in class. She's supposed to give a speech at graduation. Well, she skips instead to go and sell her skateboard, because she's also gotten into this prestigious college called Billington's, where it's like all of the world leaders kids go. Anybody who's got money, who's going to become something great in the future goes there. I go there. You know, Jason Valentine goes there, that senator of New York's son. Anyway, and my best friend. Anyway, so she sells her skateboard because she's not going to need it anymore. Well, as she leaves this pawn shop right across the street, there's this little pharmacy, right? And this big beast comes out of there, and he's got like these big wings, and this will be our first interaction with what's called an interloper. There's some kind of alien freak that I like to describe as looking a bit like Gargoyle with like big ass teeth that don't do anything but protect the life force that's like hidden right in here. So there's that, but their teeth aren't really offensive things. They're just big ass teeth that do this thing on their face to cover their life force. Anyway, that thing attacks. It gets taken down appropriately, and then we move on with life. So then Eve's moving into Billington. She's assigned to be in the best dormitory of all, the one that I'm in, the one that Jason is in, the one that all of the rich kids are in, because the dean of the school really likes her. We'll find out, because she is the most powerful chimera in the world, as we'll also find out. So we learn that. And as she's meeting all these other kids, she meets the mean girls, Madison, Hayden, and what's the name, Heather? Yeah, who gives a fuck about Heather, let's be honest. Heather is just a gossipy little bitch, alright? But so we meet those people, and Eve will be sharing rooms with Queen of the Diamonds, Madison. We call her that because her dad runs this huge diamond gem jewelry thing, business, you know, probably bringing them in illegally, probably with slave work and slave labor in other countries. It's whatever, you know, you do what you gotta do. That's what all business people work it out. Anyway, so she's sharing with Madison, who also gives her this, gives all of her friends these little unbreakable diamonds that her dad is making in a lab, right? So she gives Eve one, as well as the other girls that are her friends, like Hayden, and Hayden, who has an unbelievable crush on Madison, let's be honest. And then, for some reason, I think Heather has one. So, we got that. So the 4 classes that Eve's taken this semester are Leadership Principles, Business Math, Strategic Communications, and Physical Combat. I'm sort of wondering what class guide she was looking at, because some of those are kind of bizarre. I never heard of them before, but apparently other people are in those classes, so it's not totally made up. As you might expect, Eve is the only girl that is in the physical combat class, and as you might expect, because Eve is a chimera, she's going to hand all of the boys their asses when they're running and fighting each other in real time. We'll also meet our first baddie boy of the book, infamous Chin Dimple, whom Madison is eventually going to be dating in an attempt to make Jason jealous. And let me just tell Madison right now, that shit doesn't work on my boy Jason, alright? I've known him for a while. That doesn't work. So, we go to communications class, and Eve also meets this girl named JJ, who's a hacker, who wants to be friends with Eve for some reason, even though she's kind of standoffish. But for some reason, JJ is feeling some sort of kinship, tries to start something up. Eve isn't having it, moves on. So while Billington does have some advanced security, it turns out it's not enough against the interlopers, and interlopers have interloper attacks have been on the rise on campus, right? So Eve's hanging out with Heather, being taken for a blood test of some kind, because that's what friends do for some reason. Jason and I never did that, but okay. And this is when Jason is rushed into the medical center with his chest just like cut open like he's some sort of frog in a dissection class, right? Because the aliens had their hands on him, and this is what they've done to him. So while he's being pushed into the medical center where they're gonna take care of him, people are just flying left and right, and that's because my buddy Jason, and it's because my boy Jason is also actually a chimera, which is why they targeted him, right? But his powers are only just now starting to awaken, because they normally awaken in older adulthood. Even though, you know, little Eve awakened it when she was 8, I think it has more to do with like being stressed out, and you know, college is hella stressful. So that's probably why most chimeras awaken in teenage years, right? Also, thanks to the power of healing chimeras have, Jason is not dead because of that dissection shit going on his chest, but he also has to be in the hospital for a bit because he's still gotta heal. It's not like an instantaneous thing like the Wolverine or some shit. So Eve is called into Dean First's office. Anyway, Dean First tells Eve that she'll be teaching Jason how to use her powers on a sort of tutoring basis, because she's the strongest chimera in the world, and that's the senator of New York's son. So match made in heaven, apparently. Probably. Also, since she's an orphan, this works out for her because all of her classes will be paid for by the university if she follows through and does what she needs to do for Jason. Eve doesn't really want to do it because she, one, never wanted her Chimera-ness to be found out in the school. She moved to Billington hoping to start a new life as some nobody human. And that's apparently not happening. And she doesn't actually have the ability to say no as much as Dean first likes to pretend that he's only presenting her with an idea. Over the next few weeks, Jason and Eve will become impatient with each other as he's hurt and moping, and Jason can be kind of a little bitch when he's sick, when he's got a little cough. He pretends that he's dying for real, and he can't even put in a freaking hot pocket, right? So Jason's gonna be like that for a couple of weeks, and he's dealing with his hangover daddy issues because his daddy hasn't talked to him or seen him since he'd been admitted into the hospital, and apparently his dad probably hates him for also being a Chimera, and his dad's got an appearance to uphold by being the senator who is now the father of a friggin' Chimera. So is it apparently his wife that is a Chimera that he didn't know, or is this no genetic to this? I'm still kind of wondering about that. Anyway, Jason gets really good at using his abilities, but also briefly learns the risk of pushing himself too hard, that your brain sort of low-key explodes and starts coming out your nose, and yeah, thankfully he doesn't really hurt himself too much, but Jason's always had kind of a streak on pushing it a little too far. Now, as you might expect, by spending so much time together in this little room and really only getting to talk to each other, they're spending so much time together and they bond, and they're pretty much low-key boyfriend-girlfriend without actually saying it. Maybe they aren't thinking it that way yet, or maybe somebody's holding it back because it'll scare the other one off. I don't know, but they're that close. Now, Jason, being the popular cutie guy that he is, and I'm allowed to say that, he's got just a table full of gifts from all over the university, from people that are just really trying to get it in with him because really he's a pretty powerful guy outside of things, and he's a hottie. And so, what do you do when you want to court a hottie? Well, you start giving them shit when they're not feeling, up to it, right? So one of the gifts is a small box that he's been using to, practice his powers, and it's from Madison, the mean girl, the Diamond Queen, right? And he opens it, and there's a pair of her panties inside of the box. Now, are they used or not? I'm not entirely sure. I'm hoping she didn't send her dirty drawers into Jason's room because that's pretty gross, but alright. Jason's already claimed, but I'm pretty sure that they are used because this is Madison's sort of way of kind of trying to claim Jason is her property, because she has a list of 10 dudes that she is most likely to marry, that she wants to marry, and Jason is number 2 on the list, though he might have got bumped down for being a Chimera. That's kind of the stuff that I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but there's that. And Madison's also kind of pissed that Eve has been spending so much time with Jason, and she's been hearing it through the grapevine that is the bitch named Heather, okay? So now you've got all of that shit. A couple extra things. While visiting the medical center, Eve also has become friends with a younger medical intern named Arman, and it turns out that gossip girl Heather also works at the medical ward so that she can keep an eye out on shit that's going down, because this is where gossip happens. This is also how Madison actually found out about Eve spending time with Jason. So it turns out that despite the school being for the rich and elite and powerful, the security here is nothing when it comes to the alien invasion, like I said. So the president's son, Marshall Watergate, I think it was, is attacked and murdered with a warning being put out to everyone on campus to stand down or more humans will die, because the interlopers really want to badly suck on the blood of the Chimeras. They got their reasons. They sort of absorb the abilities of the Chimeras short term, so it's kind of like taking a drug, but then that drug actually giving you powers for a short period of time. And since the interlopers' teeth are really just there for covering their life sources, they only eat stuff that's liquid. They consume liquid only. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. With goal being to find Chimeras so they can consume their blood and get their powers, that's a little bit difficult. Fortunately enough for them, though, the university itself made a list of all the Chimeras, put it on a computer, and you guessed it, the interlopers stole that list. Surrounded by imbeciles here, I swear to God. So meanwhile, as Jason is released from the hospital and taking Eve a little more seriously, he invites her to what we boys like to call a boys' night. So before Jason got into the whole hospital Chimera thing, we actually met like once, maybe twice a week, and by we I mean the boys in the Rutherfordian Hall. We would just play games and we would drink beer because it doesn't matter that we're on campus. If you know who I am, you know who I am, and you're not telling me to drink beer, okay? You're not telling any of us elite boys not to drink beer because you know what's coming for you if you do. So we would just gather and gamble and drink and have a good time. But it turns out a lot of the boys that we would sort of hang out with, yeah, they're bigots. So when they learned that my boy Jason was some kind of chimera, they decided that they were gonna bail. So the only people that showed up was Sancho, me, and this weird guy, maybe Sancho's roommate, I can't remember, but he had like glasses and he was fat and he was really, really, really fucking sweaty. So Eve comes in and she like cuts herself accidentally because we're in like this workplace room, this building that's under construction or some shit, and she cuts herself, and this guy, this roommate, is just like sweating bullets. It's like so sweating so much that his skin is coming off, like his sweat is acidic, and it's just flesh is plumping onto the ground, right? And it turns out this sweaty roommate guy is actually a sort of alien in disguise. So they wear people's skin and then it melts off, and it's fucking disgusting, let me tell you. But so then this guy attacks, and after quite a bit of trouble, even Jason not able to take him down, but it was give and take for a while there. I wasn't really sure how that was going to turn out. So after they take down this alien, they take it to Armand, who is way, way too eager to dissect that beast. Let me tell you, I'm pretty sure that kid's gonna be a psychopath, serial killer in the future. Look, I'm from New York. I know what that shit looks like, and it looks like that kid. So, but I can at least be grateful to this little serial killer in training because he's the one that figures out how the alien skin suits work exactly by dissecting this shit. So, thanks for that. It's shortly after this that I take everybody to my room and show them my gun collection, which we'll need in order to fight the alien menace. And that's right, they're like behind all of my pictures, they're inside of my dresses, they're behind my bureau, they're behind my television. Like, I have my entire room decked out. You're basically walking into the gun shop in Men in Black, alright? So that's what my room looks like. Now, people are generally hateful towards chimeras. I'm not really sure if I've made it clear how much people hate chimeras already, but it kind of got worse after the death of the president's son because everybody was blaming chimeras for the death of that guy's son. So mobs started forming outside of Rutherfordian Hall because Eve is there and Jason is there, and those are the two known chimeras on campus, right? So there are mobs and they're spitting at them as they walk down, you know, to the lunchroom or whatever, or to the classes or whatever, and they're holding picket signs, and they got their little fabric signs that they painted at home or whatever, and sometimes they even try to punch people as they walk past. It's what they're just out of control, okay? This is not a riot. This is a college campus. So Eve just still continues going to school because she really can't just drop out of it. And in doing so, she has to put up with increased animosity from a class, which includes things and anti-chimera speeches at the front of a classroom by her idiot classmates, and the boys in her class, in her combat class, try to hand her ass to her, which doesn't work because she's still stronger than them. But that doesn't stop Chin Dimple from pinning her to the ground at some point, trying to rape her in front of the class. Look, it's not really that far. He just kind of is sexually frustrated, obviously, and rubs one out on her while he's pinning her to the ground, and then she beats his ass. So, you know, fair's fair. So things might be escalating, getting a little more tense, but Jason's birthday is still coming up, and Eve has been invited to attend the birthday as Jason's date. Now me, being the perfect best friend, gentleman, smart guy, debonair guy that you will ever meet, you know, I know that Eve needs to set a beautiful example that she wants to impress, and I know that I can help her do that. So what do? Well, as the best of friend that I am for both Jason and Eve at this point, I fly her to New York, my hometown, my home city, where I live and love, and where Jason and I are from, and where his dad is from, and I take her to my house, and I introduce her to my ma, who is a beautiful TV star, like movie star. My dad is a picker of beautiful women, lover of beautiful things. How do you think I turned out so well? And since my ma is so good at fashion and beauty icon, basically, she takes Eve and gives her a makeover and gives her some of her clothing and redoes a gown that they picked out and refits it for her, right? So now Eve is decked out like a movie star. And so we fly back on my private jet just in time to be just enough late for Jason's birthday that was still cool. So we get there, and I tell Eve and Jason that, I'm here just to put in an appearance because it's kind of a big deal since Jason and I are buds. And so I tell them both that I'm only here to, have my face be seen here. Since Jason and I are best buds, I gotta do this for him, I gotta do this for the papers, but I really don't want to be at this sort of stuffy event. It's not really my scene. So after maybe 10-15 minutes, I'm gonna go bug out and head to a Chimera club that I know downtown, right? They can join me if they want. It's gonna be a good time. We can meet new people, we can talk to new people, and it'll be better than this stuff fest full of journalists and Jason's dad and his people. So I say that and I peace out. Meanwhile, Eve and Jason are dancing and they're doing their thing when Jason's dad kind of puts on this huge show of shit because Jason's dad is so concerned about appearances and what people think of him and whatnot, and Jason is just not having it. So they get into a little fight about how Jason's dad and his mom are treating Eve and the way that Madison is treating them both, and the way that Madison shows up with Chin Dimple at this party because now she's apparently outwardly dating Chin Dimple to try to make Jason jealous. Again, that's not gonna work, so I hope you enjoy Chin Dimple because that's all you're gonna get. I'm just saying. I have a better chance with Jason than you, Madison. So there's that. And once Jason and Eve have had enough and they had a kiss at the birthday party, they finally leave the room because they don't want to deal with this shit anymore, and they meet me over at the Chimera Club downtown. Now, while we're here, we also run into yet another interloper dressing as a human being. Ironically, while the two of them were holding up all of these bodies on the dance floor because there were a lot of people at the club and everybody was floating, including the interloper that they were trying to meet, you could see it with Eve and Jason on both sides of the room, and they were staring at each other, their eyes were meeting, and you know what song was playing on the radio at that exact moment that they were fighting the interloper and using their powers? Yeah, it was "I'll stop the world and melt with you." Right? It couldn't be more perfect because you know what the Chimeras call it when they're lifting people up with their magical powers? They call it melting. And so clearly at that moment, Jason and Eve were melting the world together. They were stopping everything and melting the world together. It was perfect, okay? So eventually, the interloper is taken down. And I forgot to mention this earlier, so excuse me for bouncing around a little bit, but that first interloper that was brought to Amman after it was initially dissected, Dean First and her military guys confiscated it because they wanted it. Well, JJ ordered us to bring another one because they carry around some technological abilities, whatever, so they can communicate between each other, and JJ wanted us to grab that so that she could hack into it so that we could start tailing them. Yeah. So, with this guy, we bring him back to Amman and to JJ, and we find some devices on him, right, that we can use to hack into the communication system that the interlopers are running, so that maybe we can get in front of them and stop them from killing another human being, because that really wouldn't be that great. Following this, JJ is actually able to hack into the system, and we are able to track down an alien layer in the middle of nowhere, and this massive battle ensues that's right outside this cave, and the aliens have also abducted the Italian president's daughter that we find inside of a cage inside of this layer, and we free her and return her to the president back at the university, while we also have killed a bunch of these alien things, right? So the battle is tough, and Eve is so while we did beat 50,000 of these stupid little alien things, Eve is we need something better, something stronger for taking down aliens so it isn't this hard. She comes up with using the diamonds made out of the laboratory, grown from the everlasting diamonds that Madison's family is known for. And so these things aren't for sale yet. It's still just an idea, it's very exclusive, and the plan to get them then requires that someone date Madison long enough to get her to give them everlasting diamonds. So Jason's first proposition to do this, I don't fucking know, is asked to do this, and he says, "No, Eve, I can't flirt with anybody that isn't you. I don't like Madison. I don't want to pretend to like Madison, whatever." And so then Jason and Eve have this brilliant idea where they look at me to ask me to go and date Madison. Now, if you know anything about me, you know how ludicrous that is, because I clearly like men. I love men. They're hot bodies, they're tight asses, especially in just the right kind of pants and the right shirt. But they want me to go after Madison. It's, my God. Can somebody call this a hate crime for me? But anyway, since I'm a good enough sport and I love Jason and Eve is okay, I guess, I accept the challenge. It's not really that much of a challenge because if you met me, I'm kind of fucking charming. Like, I'm so charming, I don't even have to talk to Madison before she's already fallen for me, right? I just walk up to her and go, hey, you want to go do something? And she's like, yeah. So, that's easy. The hard part is getting through the date, and she's, like, constantly throwing herself at me and, like, feeling down my body, and she grabs a hold of, fortunately, she grabs a hold of my Glock, not my cock. So, that might have been a problem if it had gone that far. After I survive the dates, we've got new diamond bullets made out of these everlasting diamonds because I bought every last one of them they had in the warehouse, and Jason asked for a diamond axe, which sounds kind of silly, but actually it looks pretty badass. So now that JJ has worked through the alien communication system thing, we can track down other attacks and listen to what the aliens are doing on their side. We hear about them going to attack a local student named Sam, I think it was. And so while we know about this attack, we've also been ordered by the dean to stay out of this sort of business. It's not our job, whatever, they don't want us to get in the way. However, we've got other plans. So we set up alibis and make our way to the attack site that was on the intercom. In the middle of it all, after we've sort of dealt with this situation, Eve comes back to her room to see an interloper going through her things, and Madison has moved out of her room. There's also a bunch of, like, stuff underneath Madison's bed that makes it look like Madison has been doing graffiti all over the place, because, like, there was a die chime die in one of Eve's classrooms, and there's also posters going around that say chime bitch with Eve's face on them. Like, there's all sorts of shit going on right now that, frankly, it's just a distraction. So all at once, the campus, long story short, getting through a lot of this, all at once, the campus is under attack by interlopers. Like, buildings are exploding, you can't get new students, you can't get new classes, anything. You could barely, I mean, you could still make it to your dorm, and let me tell you, people are still sleeping through it as flames, like, lick up the building because, you know, we're all tired. It's, like, basically finals time. So, everything is under attack, and the interlopers are no longer holding back. They are just absolutely attacking anyone and everyone, and except for the protesters. You know what? They're still not taking any of the protesters off the ground, who are just outside Rutherfordian Hall, screaming at chimeras. I don't know why that is, but whatever. While all of this is going down, Dean first decides it's a great time to call all of the chimeras back to his, office to say, hey, get off campus, we don't want you here. Evacuate immediately. Eve wants nothing to do with her friends anymore because she almost got Jason killed during some interaction with that interloper that was in her room, and she panicked, and yeah. While sitting in one of Eve's classes, I think it was the speech class, community leadership class, whatever, one of her classmates starts going on some long rant about how chimeras are bad and everybody should be afraid of them and blah, 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 blah. Well, it turns out, even though Eve turned her back on all of her friends because she doesn't want to hurt them and she thinks that she's the one hurting us, whatever, we're basically adults, if not adults, but whatever, Eve. JJ still hasn't given up on Eve, and neither have any of us. We're kind of just waiting around for her to change her mind, and as this guy in her class is going on and on about how terrible chimeras are, JJ hacks into this guy's computer, right? Because he's giving his speech using computer assistance with a PowerPoint. So JJ hacks into this guy's computer, and get this, dude has a porn folder. Who keeps porn on their computer when you can literally Google it at any given time of day? Like, what kind of idiot are you? And you don't even hide your porn folder, really, bro? And so, not only is there porn that is, like, the kind that he ingests, but there's also, like, a couple videos of his porn where it takes him, like, 3 minutes to come, right? And so, JJ also plays that right in front of the class, so we can see just how good this guy is in bed, which, spoiler alert, it's not great. After all of this is said and done, Eve kind of realizes that she's not actually alone, that she has friends, and that we are going to take the aliens down together. So, Eve and the rest of us follow the alien signal back to some hotel downtown that's right across the street from Chimera Club. Who would have figured that that is where they made their main base? Sancho is armed with his second big invention called the Dirtier Sanchez, which I also like to call Paula. His first big invention was called the Dirty Sanchez, and he used it when we went to that layout that they had the Italian president's daughter in, and that used a bunch of my guns and this remote control thing. So now he's got basically a flamethrower backpack. That's the Dirtier Sanchez / Paula. Using this, he burns the whole place down because it's also basically using the same alien technology that's like the skin suits. So this building's kind of got a skin suit of its own, and we have to burn it because heat makes this fake skin stuff, second skin, just melt away. And that's when we start finding the deeper burrows of the alien layer that the aliens have been like melting their skin into because their skin's not real. Now, as we kind of go around the alien layer here, we start seeing a bunch of different things like captives in cages and lots of cages. I think the aliens might be a bit on the kinky side, if you know what I mean, which, you know, not no harm, no foul. I like my little bit of kink too, but these aliens love it. I'm just saying, it might get kind of sticky in here on a Saturday night. That's all that I'm gonna say. Anyway, so we're wandering through this whole place, and we come across this room that is clearly a crematorium, and there is just ash everywhere. And Sancho, unfortunately, trips and gets some of it in his mouth, in which he starts freaking out that he's got human in his mouth. Yeah, my condolences, kid. And so we're getting hella attacked by aliens at this point because we are deep in their lair and all of this shit. So we have to leave Sancho behind. He volunteers. He volunteers to stay behind to fight these aliens back, right? And so we all continue. Well, then we have all of these captives that need to be taken out, and because, you know, I'm the nice guy that I am, I volunteer to be the duck daddy that leads these little ducklings back out to the real world, right? They just have to follow me because I am the duck daddy. That's just what happens here. So Eve and Jason continue on through the hallway until Jason also has to get separated from Eve one way or another, because it ends up with just Eve finding Hayden tied to or bound to a kinky steel table surrounded by aliens. You can probably guess what's coming after that, and it kind of rhymes with bukkake. In fact, I think it is just called bukkake. Anyway, Eve takes down all of those aliens and frees Hayden. Now, it turns out that Hayden, who is Madison's, girlfriend, basically. This girl has a huge-ass crush on Madison. I don't know why, but she's always following her around, giving her those goo-goo eyes. You know, it's those eyes that are like, I want to fuck you so bad kind of eyes. I've seen them. I know what they look like. This is what Hayden does for Diamond Girl Madison. And, so Hayden is calling for help from Eve, right? Eve helped her off the table. Well, it turns out that Hayden has actually been an interloper all along and binds Eve to that table, right? So, kind of ridiculous, yeah? Well, it gets a little bit more ridiculous, because while Eve is binded to the table, she also is being taunted by this guy that's actually called Farron, right? That's the thing that was inside of Hayden this whole time. His name was Farron. I don't know what that means in their native tongue. This guy really isn't fair on anything, if you know what I mean. So he's about to rip into Eve to start getting into her, her blood, because she is the strongest chimera, and he is pretty sure that her blood will give him powers for longer than any other chimera in the past, right? So before he gets started, though, Eve comes up with the idea of asking him to just, monologue for a little bit about what his plans are, like, how's life? Tell me what your thoughts are. Why are you doing this? Because you're the big bad guy, right? So you better, tell me your plans, right? And Farron is like, I know what you're doing, but I'll still tell you what my plans are because I do like to talk. And so Farron goes on and on for a while about what his evil plans are and what it is that he's doing, which I've already told you 1.5 million times over. He thinks that Eve will be the savior to his problems of losing the powers of the chimeras because she is the strongest, and probably wants to eat Jason as well, though not as much as he wants to eat Eve, as you might imagine. And as time goes on, Jason finds his way back into this room, and it comes to a showdown between Eve, Jason, and Farron. Eventually, Farron does die, and it's kind of a sad moment, because now where's Madison gonna get her girlfriend? And Eve had to take her chimera powers to the highest point, in which her brain was basically exploding, and this is after she's been cut up a little bit, because Farron did actually start cutting into her while she was on the table before Jason got there. So Eve is passed out. Jason is getting her off of the table and taking her out of the building, carrying her in his arms, and by the time he gets back to the car, she's already passed out. Like, her life is gone, right, out of her body. She's got a heartbeat, but she is, like, gone. So I'm in the driver's seat, and JJ is in the passenger, whatever, and she's telling me that she's going to leave me with some GPS, and I better just listen. And, number one, this bitch needs to learn how to talk to somebody that is better than her. Like, you don't just tell me what to do. I get what you're trying to do, but this isn't how you get me to do it, right? So I still listen. Well, Jason is in the back seat giving Eve CPR, because apparently giving mouth-to-mouth is going to bring her back from when she exploded her brain, and Sancho is just screaming his guts out, because I'm going 150 through a neighborhood and a highway to get back to Billington College, because we have a medical center at our building that is actually better than a lot of other places. It also has one of the only Kimura specialists in California there, so that's obviously where we're going, because we're dealing with Kimura problems. Well, guess what? He's apparently on vacation. Fortunately enough, little Aman is wandering around the medical center at this time while the campus is still on fire, mind you. And we ask him, well, Jason asks him, if there's any way to help Eve because the Kimura specialist is gone. Well, little Aman says that there's some sort of experimental treatment up in the old man's room, and if you just go up there and grab it, Aman can do it to Eve, but it might not save her life. He doesn't really know how it's going to work, but Jason is desperate for it. Now, not only are we here at this hospital, but so are the military patrolmen that we sort of defied by chasing after the aliens. So, of course, they arrest us, right? They point their guns at us. They tell us not to move. Well, we buy a little bit of time with Sancho lighting some of the fixtures in the hospital waiting room on fire. That only gives us a little bit of time. But as we're set up against the wall, waiting to be taken off to jail, which, of course, I'm going to get out of because my family's got good lawyers, and we know how to deal with this criminality shit. Jason, Sancho, and I, and JJ a little bit, all kind of come together to make a plan in which we attack the patrolman so Jason can get upstairs, grab that little package, come back downstairs, hand it to Aman, and then we're captured again by the patrolman. So that happens, and then Aman takes the package into the emergency room where they're just about to call Eve dead, and he hooks this thing up to her head, shaves a little part of her off, shocks her a couple of times, and she comes back to life, more powerful than ever. The place is just shooting Kimura energy. We're grabbing onto furniture so we don't fly away like everybody else, and yeah. She fully heals, though she is in the hospital shortly still after that. And it's Christmas Eve when she wakes up. I'm with my ma. Sancho is with his family out of state, I think it was. And Jason has been in the hospital with Eve this entire time. So there's that. Now, it turns out that there's this bigger alien thing going on, but right now it's Christmas Eve and we're just going to have a good time and be together. And that's where the story ends. So, thanks. So, now that I have gone through the storytelling part, I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me to just sort of ad-lib / summarize that story. Let's get into the actual feedback on the story that I have and the reaction that I had to this story. And already I'm going to give you a hot take. I actually enjoyed this book way more than the Saviors series books, and I think that this was better written in general than those books. It's going to be hard, if not impossible, to not compare this to the Saviors series, since both belong to the same author, and I read them both in like the last 4 months, or all three in the last 4 months. And I think there's a lot of value, actually, in comparing the characterization in the older work and the newer work, specifically in this case, because of how drastic the difference is. I set my expectations for this going in pretty low because I had already read The Savior's Sister and The Savior's Champion, and this was so different in a good way. Like, it was so different in a good way that I went and looked for a copy to purchase paperback of, and this is what the inside of my copy looked like. I'm not sure what the chances are of having gotten a penis in my copy, but apparently I attract a lot of dicks. So tell me what that means, what you think that means in the comments down below. And getting into the story elements, though. Characters. Eve is flawed in being bratty, standoffish, and emotionally shut off to others. And in part, it's because of the social rejection and bullying that she's faced throughout the years by everyone in her community, including her aunt, who didn't like her because she was a Chimera and also kind of killed that trucker, which, okay, reasonable. She goes into a new school wanting to start over, but remains closed off to people, in part as her defense mechanism to not make herself vulnerable, and also in part to not expose her secret, because that's the main reason that she went to this new location. Try as she might, though, that secrecy doesn't last, to no fault of her own. Throughout the book, you see her remain standoffish with most of them, especially JJ, only to soften as she learns that she does have friends for real and that people do care about her, and that she is stronger in a group than if she is by herself. This also strengthens her bond and ability to connect with other people. This character growth is something that you never really see in the Savior series, and it was very refreshing to see in Eve. Despite the issues Eve was dealing with in the mobbing and the Die Chime Die background and all the bullying, this novel still had an air of lightness and hope and faith in humanity in the group with friends that surrounded Eve. Jason, Sancho, and Percy were also a good variety of friends, from the lover boy with daddy issues to a kind of immature dork to a childhood best friend with a gun collection and a killer smile. So these leading guys in Eve showed a variation in personality and presentation that will be remembered because of their over-the-topness and their uniqueness that, unlike the cast of Savior's champion / sister, most of those guys were creeps or forgettable, except for Hylas, Toby, and the sage old man who is about to die. All of the rest of them pretty much didn't matter. But these guys all had a very unique personality. Even if they were tropey at times, even if they were over the top at times, you'll still remember them for how unique they were and how unique they spoke and how unique their relationships in the story were and how they actually helped build the story. In the Savior's sister and the Savior series, everything always revolved around making Layla the victim and putting Layla on this pedestal, which, whatever, she's a goddess, you can do that, but also it weakened her. You have that same parallel here with Layla and Eve, where Eve is also the strongest in the universe, but she is also weak personally, and they allow her to be weak, and they allow her to become vulnerable, and they force her to become vulnerable and trusting of the group around her, whereas Layla always remains standoffish, and she really didn't even need Dungeon Daddy to save her. That was just kind of thrown in there and felt kind of silly after everything else that had happened in that book. As much as there are bad people in this book, in some of the teachers, and in Chindimple and in Dean First / Farron, there are still more good people in this book that fought for Eve as well. So it's not like as night and day as what happens in the Savior series. Side note, Farron and Dean First should have been women, because making them dominant women characters was such a great touch suggested by the Loinstream, and implementing them totally changed the characterization and the dynamic in such a fun way, and I love that about the Loinstream. So anyway, the characters in general might not have always been likable, especially Eve. JJ I didn't really care about, and Madison Hayden I thought were funny and tragic, but they did have more levels, and they're more unique than anybody in the Saviors series. As for the character tropes, I don't really care. I just had a good time with the story, and tropes have never been anything that really bother me. Going into the pacing was kind of off. Some of the scenes ran longer than they needed to, particularly the scenes with classes. Specifically, Chapter 2 felt so long, and some of Jason's training scenes, but once you got about halfway there, the pacing really picked up. Scenes still went on a little longer, and the prose kind of got repetitive at times, but that's nothing that a good line editor couldn't help with. Since the classes didn't contribute really anything to the plot, I think that those could have been pulled back to have only 1 or 2 of them instead of a full 4 classes every time classes were shown, and this book didn't need to be 450 pages, or whatever it is in paperback, which mine is over there, so I don't have that on me of how many paperback pages that is. But the other thing is, with the pacing and the classes specifically, they were lined up in this to be one after another, which made it look more like high school than college, because at least with my experiences with college, I didn't have, at least with undergraduate, I didn't have class after class after class every single day of the week. It was staggered. So with this, it felt more like it was a high school representation, and then maybe it was shifted in adult life because the author was revisiting the story in adult life, and so then she shifted the age groups, when this could have been a high school for the elite. Also, some other things that stood out in the writing that were just repetitive were common phrases like comrade and groupsome, like twosome, threesome, foursome were constantly used when they came up, and there were other things that were pointed out in the narrative while we were reading it. Descriptions. I don't know if this should be surprising, but the descriptions of violence, gore, and fighting in this book were so much better than those in the Savior series. This was more detailed, with more brutality, and the moment that Jason cut off that interloper's head with the diamond axe, it was beautiful. I don't know how you go from this level of description to the death tournament and have less violence and guts, but even the descriptions of the interloper's skin melting off was more grotesque than anything I remember from the Saviors series. As for the romance, I actually thought Jason and Eve were pretty cute. Their courting was innocent and sweet, and much like young love met in forced proximity, social rejection, and traumatic experiences. I also didn't mind Jason having his berserker moments over Eve, but I think the berserk fighting trope is just one that I actually like. Malcolm in Dracula's Guest by Amaya Tenchi also had the same thing going on, not necessarily specifically in response to a girl, but in part because he berserked because he was a werewolf, even though there is some level of protection for Cammy in that as well. And then there's Aiden in Dying Light 2, who is having berserker moments as we learn more about him. So I realized that I just like the berserker defense trope, and it can be fun to play with. So I know some people don't like that, but I do. Addressing the bigotry and the hate mobs in this book, the hatred from the normies towards the chimeras makes plenty of sense within the story. Although I feel like all of the chimeras in the story should have had fairly decent melting powers that would have made them feel more like a threat, instead of saying like all of them can basically lift a tiny box level and then only a couple few can actually lift people. This would have made it more likely that non-chimeras would have seen chimeras as a threat because it would have been more powerful pretty much everywhere. I also wish that with the bigotry, there had been more subtle escalation on campus rather than straight out spitting and pitchforks, because by 30% there was already the pitchfork mobs, instead of just increasing the animosity from fear and panic over the interlopers attacking and getting caught between the aliens and chimeras. So if it's already that bad at 30%, you have 70% more to go, where do you take it from there? You can't go very many places, so the first time an anti-chimera debate comes up, it's new. But then when we get another one towards the end, it's just repetitive. It's got to escalate to show the escalation of the tension in the text. So starting at 200 and staying at 200 for 600 pages or 450 pages, whatever, is not going to work to build tension. The slow escalation and attempts to manage fear, panic, animosity, and relationships would have pumped up the tension and the drama of this book and also made it seem less repetitive. It also would have given Eve and the others a chance to try to mitigate the problem and their tactics with the normies being allowed to fail as things got worse and worse and worse. Writing quality. So I'm not entirely sure how writing can actually appear worse in future books than in earlier ones, but after reading all three of this author's current novels that are out at the moment, Eve feels like a book written for fun while having fun and just for the fun of it. There's no thought into rules, appearances, pissing people off, saying the right thing politically to gain a following, or trying to be something so insanely unique and masterful or defying expectations, like finding a trope and then flipping it somehow to be this completely out of nowhere thing. It just is what it is. It's over the top, almost a teen sci-fi action story that's just meant to be fun. Flamethrower backpack, fun. Diamond bullets and diamond axe, super fun. I get that there are going to be people that cannot deal with this level of ridiculousness or don't like this level of ridiculousness, but it's something that speaks to me. The kind of innocent and ridiculous fun in this is immature and playful in a refreshing way, and it's something that was missing in the Saviors series. Comparatively, the Saviors series felt mean and angry between the way Layla treated people and the way all of the men were portrayed. There's a chip on someone's shoulder. There's an attempt in those books to be something that they aren't, like a badass female. But with this, it's just being a fun ride, and I think that it has some great visuals, even if the book could be cut down to get through some of the slower, sloggy parts. What I think often happens is in picking up writing advice to learn how to write better, a lot of people learn and lean into these lists and shorthand lists like show don't tell, trope lists, villain monologuing, just like things that are really quick to pick at and be like, I can identify that like this. And then they immediately start putting it in their head that you can't ever do this, don't ever do this, or you're a bad writer, a bad person, it never works because I've been told not to do this. And I think that can get stuck in people's heads to the point that it can be hard to differentiate when stuff can work and when stuff can't work, because suddenly by looking at these lists that people have said don't do this, it is now in your head as a list and it stands out every time. But also, again, like writing styles and the way a story is put together is going to differ from person to person, what we enjoy, what we don't enjoy, and there's also that. Like, not everybody is ever going to be able to fit inside of your audience or like the way that you do things. So, if the way that you consume books is through looking at it with these rules, then nothing against you. But I think there is more to a story than identifying trends, tropes, and writing advice or saying don't do this. Then again, maybe my opinions are biased in another way because I never watched this author's videos before reading this book or any of her other books, and I didn't hold her up to some standard. From what I've seen from her recently, like being condescending while telling people that men are human while actively not writing men in the way that she's telling you to write men, I can get why people might be mad at her if she did this to the same kind of stuff that ended up in this book. But overall, I don't think that this book is some overly poor trash attempt at writing, and writing advice isn't as strict as some listicles might want you to believe that it is. Also, side note, ridiculous is kind of my aesthetic, so somehow not surprised that I'm cool with most of the ridiculous aspects in this book. My final points when it comes to Eve the Awakening by Jenna Moreci is that Percy is legitimately the best character in this book and deserves a happy ending, especially after all of the ways that he suffered from his guns being confiscated and used in experiments by Sancho, his kitchen being dirtied with Jason and Eve's first date, his designer table being broken once and then I think twice, his pipes being busted from Eve flicking that bullet as a test run, and then being yelled at JJ while driving his car, and probably a call to his mob dad who was like, "You're not putting my son in jail for bullshit, okay?" Because Percy is definitely in the mob. If you look at all of the signs, you can, if you've got evidence against that, if you've got some theories against that, put it in the comments because I want to see it. I mean, his mom is a New York hottie actress. His dad's missing when he goes there. He's a gun fanatic and expert driver, and he also shot a cop in the foot without restraint when they were getting arrested. A gunshot reverberated through the cramped space, echoing across the clay walls. Eve flinched and looked at her side at the slender stream of smoke oozing from the barrel of Percy's shotgun. He lowered his weapon just as he was told, but it had somehow found itself pointed at the patrolman's boot. The boot that was now seeping with yellow pus. See? He's totally an alien. Percy's got some balls over here. Percy's always been the one with the balls, though, let's be honest. He went on a date with Madison, and now he just shot somebody while he was getting arrested. His dad is totally in the mob. Like, dude does not hide who he is, and it is glorious, okay? Also, I genuinely enjoyed Armand as a secondary character who is also likely a future serial killer with his interest in dissection and obsessive personality. Even Sancho I found super fun in his immature kind of way and definitely had the best lines of the books. "Oh God, it's dead people! I'm sitting in a pile of dead people!" He scrambled out of the pit, spitting in every direction. "It's in my mouth! There are dead people in my mouth!" I could also imagine him on a couch, with JJ on one side and Paula, his flamethrower, on the other, and, just arms wrapped around. You get a kiss for one girl, a kiss for the other girl, and that's how it is. His two favorite ladies. There's just so much personality to play with in the characters presented in this novel, and it was a blast to read them. Most of the time. Not all the time. There were the slogs. I would read a second book set in this universe. I don't necessarily think that I'd ask for a second book for Eve, because I don't know if the author is in the same mindset to write something as lighthearted as Eve is. Part of the charm here is the innocence of it all and how it's not mean and how it is just for fun and kind of ridiculous and it's sweet. And that mindset might just not be in the author anymore if the Saviors series is anything to go by. So those are my thoughts on Eve the Awakening. I would love to hear what yours are down in the comments below. Have you read this book? Will you read this book? Are you questioning my taste levels? That's fine. I still enjoyed reading this with the Loin stream on Friday nights, and if you want to come hang out with us as we read a book and get to talk about it and just have a blast, keep a lookout for when I go live, which is usually most Fridays. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die. Also, if you enjoyed me reading the summary or delivering the summary as a character from the story, let me know, and should I do that again in the future with other books, because it's kind of fun to ad-lib a character. Anyway, yes. Hello, boomers. My name is Yanananana. In case you didn't know, I'm a YouTuber from Nide, a small town in eastern Ukraine. My family has never really understood what I do in the woods. But all I've ever wanted is to make a better life for us all. Papa always comes home from the mines angry, dirty, and tired. It's a necessary evil to do your job and be in a place that you don't want to be. But I've never wanted to spend my life doing exactly what was necessary of me. Yanni, there's someone here to see you. Americans. Americans? Yeah. Good morning. My name is Tom Cruise. This is my partner Bob Dylan, and we are big fans of your work. You're a couple of boomers. Actually, I'm a Gen Xer, but I digress. We'd like to sponsor you. Sponsor? What does that mean? We'd like to supply you with a couple of things to, help your channel explode. Who is it? Jan Bagan. Good. For a moment, I thought you were one of the Katsap looking for trouble again. What do you mean? They say they're looking for a terrorist. They want to declare war. What point is there to declare war? Human beings are simple creatures. You understand what drives humanity? You understand all human motivation. There's someone out there doing something bigger than your internet videos, and they won't hesitate to use you as a scapegoat. The Russians are begging for a reason to declare us hostile so they can take everything we have. Don't give them that reason, Jan. I should just go home, like Boris said, but I checked the video I posted last night and it has over 500 views. I'm going viral. I don't have a choice. I must produce another video. The jar I'm holding slips out of my sweaty palms. I can't waste any more time and go back for it. I grab my tripod saying sorry, 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 while I keep moving. The jar explodes. I'm deafened by something so loud and powerful, it seems unreal. Jan, did you see that? Where the hell have you been? You mean the explosion? Yes. That was me. You needed to not do this today. You don't understand, Alex. I had to do it. I had to get the views. You're going to get yourself killed, Jan. No. They're looking for a terrorist. And how do you look different than a terrorist? I'm not trying to hurt people. Ignorance of war will not stop bullet from straying into your head.